Welcome back from lunch, everyone. As you're on your way into this session, please do respond to the poll question. We've already had a number of people do so, and it's always good to get a larger sample size there. Before I turn things over to Brian and for this session entitled Reporting with PAW and PA for Excel, I do want to share about this session's giveaway. So one random attendee in this session will be randomly selected to receive this GoPro Hero 8 very cool looking camera valued at $280. And then everyone in attendance will also gain one entry for our IBM Grand Prize drawing for the 14-piece travel collection that is valued at over $1,000. You can see all the giveaways on the app in the home page. And if you have any questions there, you can let us know. For this session, allow me to introduce Brian Moore. So Brian Moore is our practice lead here at PMsquare for our planning analytics practice. And for the last 17 plus years, Brian has specialized in the budgeting and forecasting suite of IBM and Cognos applications. He co-founded ThoughtStream Consulting in 2007, which was acquired in 2014, and then joined the ever so talented team here at PMsquare in 2019. Now, Brian today will be working with you on two different topics. One, how to navigate in PAW and to quickly assemble content on a canvas, and then two, getting to know the retooled Excel add-in, planning analytics for Excel, and building and formatting reports. So with that said, I'll pull in Brian. I'll exit stage left here and let you get to it. So thanks for joining us here today, Brian, and good luck.
Thanks, Chris. And are we launching into a poll here?
So the poll was already launched, and we've got our results. Let me share them with you.
Let's check that out.
So in looking at the 12 responses here, we've got a majority of people on Planning Analytics PAW and Planning Analytics for Excel. We've got a couple folks on Planning Analytics Perspectives and TM1 Web, and then we've got 3 people here actually who are non-users of the platform.
Very good. So a good mix. So yeah, we should have some fun with this. And thank you for coming, everybody. Glad to have you. And as Chris said, we're going to be going through reporting in PAW and dashboard building, as well as the new add-in, not so new anymore, but planning analytics for Excel. And also cover a little bit of the background of TM1 and PA for those new folks. I do hope everyone got a hold of the prerequisites as far as the planning analytics for Excel piece. We will need to have you have your software installed for PAfE if you are a current customer. So that is something we couldn't really simulate. We couldn't get the licensing from IBM. So we're relying on everyone to download that software to their Excel page. If you have the package downloaded but don't have it installed, we can cover that for over a couple minutes and hopefully get that going for you. But the majority of the demonstration and the training today will be on Workspace. So that everybody should be covered. You'll be able to get a login to our demo environment, and we will work through the exercises together. So without further ado, as Chris made the introduction, my name is Brian Moore, been doing budgeting and forecasting products for 17 plus years, mainly in the IBM and the Cognos space. Hopefully you've seen some of my tutorial videos that we put out on our YouTube channel, and hopefully you find that content valuable. We try to stay up to date with the current releases and give as much information as we can out there for the new features so that you can try them out. Other than that, at PMsquare, practice lead, I handle managing implementations. I assist with the sales team on delivery of the sales cycle and tech sales and providing the proof of concept demonstrations. And I manage the consultants here on the force as well. So happy to connect with you and answer any questions you may have. And we'll get you my contact info after the session. So for the agenda today, we are going to go through a quick intro. Then we'll go through the tutorial and the training on Workspace, followed by the PAfE piece. So a little bit more brief, truncated on the Excel side. We'll do a Q&A at the end. And if we have some time, we can do some ad hoc reports in the demo system. Any particular visualizations you might want to see, or if you have any questions about how to build certain objects in PAW or PAfE, happy to assist there. And then we'll close. All right, so jumping on into it to give a brief history of TM1 and Planning Analytics, or PA, as we call it for short, for those new folks. TM1, the technology, has been around 40 years or so, and it's very unique in the way that it handles data. So it handles multi-dimensional data sets at a high volume. And the algorithm that it is built on has proven to be fairly irreplaceable. So the new tools are not standing up to it in terms of scalability. And one of the main powerful features is the sparsity algorithm. And so that allows the cube that the data is stored in to only save data for where there are data loaded to the intersections. So what I mean by that is the older tools I've worked with is if you wanted to build a 5-dimension cube, the size of the cube would be determined by the multiplication of the elements in the 5 dimensions. So if each dimension had 100 elements, you can see that the cube gets very large very quickly. It's very exponential. So you could end up with a trillion cell cube with 5 dimensions very quickly. In traditional systems, that counts against you that you need to account for all trillion cells, which is very obviously processing intensive and takes up way too much space than can be computed. And so there's been limitations to, say, tens of millions of cells, which is fairly limiting when you want to get into 8, 10, 12 dimensions. When you get a lot of dimensions in there, the cubes get very large. So on the other side of the coin here, we have TM1 that only saves data if the intersection is populated. So in that same trillion cell cube example, it's likely that only a few 100,000 cells are populated with data. The rest is what we call sparse. It's blank space. And so that is not saved in the system, and therefore the processing is thousands of times more efficient. In addition, it's RAM based, so all that data is stored in RAM as opposed to on disk. So a traditional relational database management system, the data is stored on disk, and the queries are very slow because it has to go and retrieve that information from hard disk. I like to make the reference that it's similar to having all your toys in the closet versus spread out all across the living room. You're able to easily get to those toys in the living room if they're all spread out or they're stored in RAM because it's readily available. Whereas storage in disk, it's all loaded in that closet. Hard to get to, hard to find what you're looking for. So those are the two main powerful points of the algorithm. And then come 2015, 2016, a lot of competitors entered the market, and TM1 then drastically changed. So IBM made a lot of investments. Same thing on the Cognos side as well, as I'm sure folks are familiar. They rebranded as Planning Analytics and Cognos Analytics. That brought forward new interfaces, which is what we're covering today, in order to compete with those other competitive offerings. So we have mainly a web-based portal. There's also a SaaS offering. So we cover both either a local install or a Planning Analytics on cloud, which is hosted by IBM. So you have those new options to keep pace with the times. So that is the brief history. Hopefully I didn't bore folks that are fairly fluent in this already. I do want to cover business use cases, and that's for everybody that you may not be aware of because some folks only use Planning Analytics in a limited capacity. Also, just to cover the two names, I will refer to TM1 and Planning Analytics synonymously, but the rebrand in 2016, we changed names technically, but us old timers, we still use both names. So use cases, mainly budgeting and forecasting. Obviously with the rebrand, they added planning into the title, but it's a little unfortunate that it kind of pigeonholes the product into planning, and sometimes only comes up in those types of conversations, and yet it can do so much more. It, like we said, handles multi-dimensions very well, and so it's extremely powerful for analysis. Able to slice and dice 5 dimensions or 10 dimensions, or really no limit, the technical limit 250 dimensions, but haven't seen that before. And so you're able to really get granularity on your data, whether that be by product or by customer or by sales rep or by region. So list goes on and on. If you have that level of detail in your source data, it can be analyzed in PA. So very powerful on the analysis side, but originally created for the budgeting and forecasting, because it does have write-back capability. So we were able to have users contribute their plans into the multi-dimensional cubes. So it's different in that regard from Cognos Analytics. Excuse me. And so that allows for collaboration across the enterprise, whether you just have 5 people in the plan or 500 people. PA has you covered, and you're not emailing spreadsheets back and forth. Nobody's wasting their weekend tallying up the 6 different spreadsheets or templates in different formats. All of that is just collected in the tool or collected in the Excel add-in, which is direct connected to the tool. So it all feeds into a common data repository, and there's no risk of fat fingering data in there. It's all stored together, and so the data governance and data quality is going to be a lot better. On the visualizations and dashboards, I've gotten a lot better with that with the release of Planning Analytics Workspace, or PAW. So that, as we'll see today, is the ability to build a lot of different visualizations that support your tabular-based data set and really give the data a story. So you're not just looking at 5,000 cells on a spreadsheet. You're seeing the associated visualizations that help the trends and patterns and outliers really jump out at you in those visuals. Doesn't have quite the visualizations that Cognos Analytics does, but does offer a fairly thorough set. And for smaller customers, maybe just Planning Analytics covers enough of the reporting analytics and visualization needs that you wouldn't need both tools. Of course, for the larger customers, PA and CA work very well together. And as you'll see from the current releases, they continue to look a little bit more alike with each release. So if any Cognos Analytics customers are in the session, you'll see how similar they look on the look and feel, and as well as some of the navigation. Lastly, we have some extra features kind of from a reporting standpoint that Planning Analytics can cover your reporting needs when it comes to global consolidations. I should include mergers and acquisitions in that. So the ability to consolidate an Oracle data set with an SAP, with a Excel sheet. So if you have all these entities from across the globe submitting data to corporate and in different formats and from different source systems, PA is an excellent player at that, in cobbling all that data together automatically, and not worrying. Once you have the mapping figured out, that can all feed in interchangeably. If there's a new merger, that ERP conversion project can take anywhere from 1 to 3 years, I've heard, as far as if you had to merge Oracle with an SAP acquisition. Whereas Planning Analytics can get you a global set of financials in a matter of weeks. So you're able to quickly map those chart of accounts and get a true consolidation together very quickly. Next up, currency translations. So same thing with a global set of data. You have various different countries planning in different currencies. So you want to be able to have them plan in their native tongue so that they can put in local currencies and not have to worry about getting that converted or what the translation rate is and how that applies. So PA can then receive that local data, translate it into a reporting currency, likely USD, and give that global consolidation of the plan without any extra concerns for either the user or the administrator of the plan. And lastly, intercompany eliminations. Large global entities or even domestic entities often have those where they're making transactions internally that cannot be booked twice and need to be eliminated out so that the global consolidation is accurate and survives the audit. So that is a quick history of the use cases. And next we will get into PAW. Chris, do you have any questions so far? Yeah, pause to take a sip.
Yeah, no questions yet. If you do have any questions as we're going through the workshop here, please do input them into the Q&A or into the chat section. I'll be moderating both, and then we'll bring them up to the screen, and Brian will be able to address them in live discussion here. So definitely feel free to put any questions that you might have.
Yeah, and yeah, I typically do these kinds of training sessions either live or with webcams on a Zoom. So, you know, unfortunately, we don't have audio contact with each other, but feel free, type in as much as you like to let me know if I can assist at any point, and make sure you keep with us so that we keep you engaged in the training and you get as much out of it as you can. All right, so Planning Analytics Workspace came along in 2016. Gives us a much more broad variety of visualizations and dashboard building capabilities, along with TM1's cube-based data sets. So what we're going to be doing in PAW is going to review an existing dashboard, and then we're going to create our own. We'll show you how to create canvas, as well as add all different types of contents to it, text boxes, images, media, links, shapes, buttons. We're going to build out exploration, and then we're going to build out some visualizations and show you how to synchronize and format those. So who's excited? Let's do this. Let me throw on my PAW screen. Hopefully I didn't get a dreaded timeout. And so first things first, I'm going to walk through an existing report for you. And then we'll look at getting you logged in and starting to build together with me on screen. All right, so this is our fictitious demo system. We're not going to be using this one when you build out your content, but for the sake of demos, we have a nice control panel screen here. We're able to customize the background image to any image hosted on the internet. We have a big number of navigation buttons, which drives the rest of the model. So kind of think of it like a website where we've designed 20 or 30 different planning templates, and this screen can be used to then drive and access those very easily. So that's what all these buttons are doing, kind of shaped it out in the way of a logical flow. And I see a question about the demo and username. I'll get to you shortly there. Let me just finish the quick walkthrough here. So all of these buttons would then navigate to different parts of the planning model. Shapes included to just show you how the data flows. These images of Oracle and Workday and Excel are actually process buttons. So those action buttons would then upload the source data into our TM1 source data cube. So clicking onto Oracle, if that's hooked up, shows us that refreshes and does a data sync with Oracle. I should point out that Planning Analytics is not live synced with the data sources like Cognos Analytics is. Planning Analytics stores the data in its own cube files. So that data load process can take anywhere from a few seconds to upwards of hours, but it's usually very quick because it's just doing an incremental refresh. Most of my customers, that data load is under 5 minutes and can be run multiple times per day. For the sake of planning and reporting, you often only need it once or twice a day, but definitely a nightly refresh. So it is not live synced, or it is not a live stream of data from the source like Cognos is. All right, other items on the screen. We'll go ahead and jump in, hit dashboard. So that'll navigate us to our first dashboard. and I'm going to expand that. And so very quickly we see we have some selection boxes up at the top, and those drive the 4 visualizations. I got a waterfall in the upper left, a column chart on the upper right, and another, that's a column and line on the lower left, and simple line chart on the lower right. If I were to change organization to just the East region of the company, we see all of our dashboards reflect those changes real time. Navigate back to the main screen. We'll jump forward to OpEx. And here I'm going to highlight, we have a table of data at the top and a stacked bar at the bottom. Again, if I change from East region down to Massachusetts, that updates for both visualizations because they're synchronized, and they're also synchronized across the different tabs of this particular workbook. So in line item planning, I'm still on Massachusetts. If I flick that back to total company and jump back to the OpEx page, that has updated to total company as well. So that's a nice feature to ease in the navigation. All right, so I will wrap that up. I should also cover the new features of predictive forecasts and workflow. So let me touch on that in the revenue forecast section. And so in my revenue forecast template, what I've built here, if I hit the little brain, I jump into a predictive forecast template. And so that has come along in the last 18 months, allows us to have a wizard to drive a predictive forecast based on our historicals and proprietary algorithms baked into the tool. We do not need a third-party software for this. We don't need extra consulting. It's out of the box. It's included with PA. Wonderful new feature that gives us a big leg up on the competition. So if I highlight my 4G smartphones and I hit the icon on the far right, which is out of the box, it's called Forecast. And that launches the wizard and say, what periods do you want to forecast? And I'll say Jan through December of 2021 and do a preview. And hopefully that comes up with something statistically significant. Not a very good forecast, but it's often hard to simulate in demo environments because we have dummy data, whereas if we turn it on for a customer, they get much better results because the real data does have trends to it. So that gives us a preview. If we liked the preview, we could commit, and then we'll see all the cells populated for 2021. So there's my 4G forecasts, flat 779, but hopefully better results with data that has better trends to it. Okay, so I just wanted to cover that predictive feature very quickly, and also the workflows, which is back from the main page. That's a new feature as well, is the ability to organize your planning process in a workflow. So that's called an application. And we can build the 2021 budget plan and see all the different, sorry, wrong one. See all the different components that go into the plan. So if I was the administrator and said, okay, for the planning process, we would want the user to review reports, plan their revenue, plan their headcount, and then review and submit. You'd have each of those as kind of steps in the planning process, and the user would be able to go through that guided experience. Whenever they submit, that feedback is then given to the administrator so they can keep appraised of the process, not have to string together emails or Slack or text messages to figure out where everybody's at in the plan. It's all organized in a workflow right out of the box. So a very nice feature introduced there. All right, enough of me talking. Let's all get into it. So everybody should have a login, which would be Bacon user 01 through, I think we set up 50 logins, so we should have plenty. And so if anybody is having trouble logging in, let me know. But I need the link to the environment. The link to the environment would be planning.pm2analytics.com. I can paste that into a chat or a comment. Where am I able to post that, Chris?
You can put that in the chat section. So it's the third tab within Whova.
Okay.
If you're in StreamYard, then you don't have it up. I can get it up for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, anybody else having login issues?
No other issues. Good to go.
All right, very good. There's the chat. Okay, much better. Got it. Okay. So I will go back to the main page and let's hit the hamburger in the upper left. And we're going to do a new book from template. So the new icon in blue, book from template. And from the templates, the first one we're going to try out here. Let's do three, or just a broad second template. It's a full rectangle. And with the full rectangle, we'll test out the multimedia features. And so the first icon in our new canvas here is going to be the lower left on the left-hand toolbar, the widgets. And for widgets, I want to throw a background in there. And my background, of course, is going to be bacon themed. So let me paste a hosted URL of bacon content in there. And we'll put that into the chat for you. All right, now we're cooking with bacon. When I drag that image, when I grab it by the crosshairs and drag it onto the icon in the middle of the screen, that stretches to the maximum amount of the field. It's a very helpful button. And so when we're using our templates, we often want to maximize and fill the space instead of having to resize it perfectly into its particular region. So using that auto sizer is very helpful. Obviously, this bacon is much too bright for my tastes, so I'm going to hit properties on that particular object. And you have to have it highlighted in order for the properties to work. So we see that it is highlighted by all the little boxes surrounding it. And then I'm going to go to General, and we can make the appearance a lot more opaque. So General Appearance, I'll draw that down to about 10% is all the bacon I can handle. All right, and clicking out of there, I get a nice soft, subtle bacon in the background. So that is background images. You can use that to fit your corporate palette however you see fit. If there's an image that you use in your PowerPoint deck, be nice to add it to your PAW screens as a template so that the user community feels more comfortable about your planning tool and that it's actually custom tailored to your organization. So that's very popular. Next, we'll go to a text box. That one's pretty simple. That pops up to click to add text. When we are adding multiple objects, we do want to be aware of where they are located. So pushing them to the back or sending them to the front, similar to a PowerPoint deck. So we have buttons for that. And I'm simply just going to type in Control Panel. And that's all we're going to do with text boxes. And we'll throw that up in the upper left. And next, we'll go ahead and do a action button. And for action buttons, I want to have a second tab. So I just went ahead and added a second tab there by clicking the little plus symbol. And that gives me something to navigate to. So let's do the action button, which is the icon with the arrow going to the right. And action buttons not only allow us to navigate between pages, but also drive system processes. So we did the example of the data load. We could also run a process to back up the system. So a variety of different things you can do through the use of action buttons. So let's just call this tab 2 for now. And once I've named it, I will click on it again, make sure it's highlighted, and go into my properties. And that allows me to customize what the action button does. Over this instance, we'll do navigation. And I will turn on navigation with the slider. And then I'll go to the tab in this book called tab 2. That gives us a simple navigation button. As we saw in the sample system from the SmartCo system, you can build out as many action buttons as you like in order to help the guide the user experience. So again, think of it like a web page, and you want to have those hyperlinks to be able to send the user to various points in your planning model easily from one central location. Action buttons only work when you are out of edit mode. So you do have to be saved and turn off edit mode, and then they become live. Otherwise, you just highlight it. So I'm highlighting this, but if I turned off edit mode, it would be clickable. I'll do that briefly. Turn off edit, tab 2, it becomes a handprint, navigates me to tab 2. And then I'll turn edit mode back on. You don't have to do that on your own. All right, next piece of media. Let's go ahead and maybe we'll add a video tutorial. So for media, if I click on that, I'm going to want to watch my favorite PA tutorials. Brian Moore at PMsquare, right? So I'll put that into the chat if you want to use that link. But it can be helpful to tie in instructional videos to your planning committee or planning user base, so that if there's a 60-second video or a 2-minute video, you can give them a quick walkthrough of the planning process with a embedded video directly in the tool there. I don't know if folks have tried Loom videos. I'm seeing those gaining in popularity, that you can quickly record a Loom video, save that as a URL, and then patch that in directly into your PAW system. All right, so that's media. Of course, if I close out of edit mode, I can click on that, and there I go. So now you've got me twice. But I'll pause out of that and get back into edit mode. All right, the next piece of media we can use is a web page. So this time I've jumped over to tab 2, and I'm going to do a web page. And for the web page, we'll just put the PMsquare events in there. PMsquare. Events. And I need a HTTPS prefix. And so that way we can keep appraised of the next webinar from PMsquare, where we usually talk about new features in planning analytics each month. All right, back on tab 1, we'll just throw in a shape just to say we did. And so those are very self-explanatory. Just click on any of the 70 or so shapes offered. And if you don't have the shape you want, then maybe you find the image hosted on the internet and embed it as an image instead of a shape. So it's not as flexible as, say, PowerPoint, but hopefully covers your needs there. So you can add different shapes to kind of illustrate the planning process. Any questions? I think the chat will work very well for questions, so I can just kind of see it all in one location. So feel free to chat on screen here, and I can respond to it in kind. All right, let's get forward to our first exploration here. And so I'm going to add yet another template. And this time we're going to do a triple window with a large top half of the screen and 2 panels at the bottom left and right. So that'll be at the very bottom of the list. And again, templates allow you to size your objects and assist with scrolling on different resolutions of screens. So ideally, you don't have to scroll. Scrolling is the enemy of the web page, especially left to right. So if anybody's ever designed a web page, I know we've all used web pages. It's critical that you don't have to scroll left to right if you can avoid it. It makes the user experience much better. So templates are a way to control that, so that if the content is within our template, then it will resize according to the user's resolution and be a good experience for them as far as navigating through your PAW site. So with our 3-window display, I'm going to get out of all that action button stuff so I can suppress that toolbar from the left-hand side. And this time I'm going to expand the databases, which is the top left icon. Okay, and in the databases, we're going to be exclusively in Bacon 2020. You do not have access to any of the other servers, but if this were to be a real system, you might have multiple what we call servers. Most customers just have one, because you can build hundreds of cubes within one server. Unless there's an organizational need to separate them out, we usually just build it all in one server. Of course, for our demonstration purposes, we have multiple planning analytics servers for different customers and different build outs. I'm going to open up Bacon 2020. And I should note it's very hard to change the name of a server. Thus, I did not create a new server for this year. We're just relying on last year's server. And I will go into the sales cube. And I will open up views. And I can right click or drag and drop the default view onto the screen. All right, that gives me actuals data for 2019 and total regions, total products, total customers for the demo entity. And so I will leave that up top, and we see how it is perfectly sized in that upper pane within the template. And that is our exploration. Not sure if everyone's worked with an exploration before, but if you like, you can practice the drag and drop features. It's great. Toggling sales measures with, say, regions. So I just grab that box, drag and drop it on top of regions, and those two swap. So there is the flexibility to slice and dice. I see that my regions came in as IDs only, but I want to switch that to aliases. Aliases meaning nicknames, because I want to count region descriptions on there instead of just numerics, because it doesn't help me as the user. So to do that, I can single click on regions, and in the little edit pencil, I can edit this set, and that pops open what's called the subset editor. This allows us to change which of the items are selected, so which ones I'm going to display on screen. I'm fine with this selection. I just want to turn on the aliases. So in the center of the screen is what I call the mugshot. It looks like a kind of a bust of a person with their head and shoulders. And so we'll click on that button and click on ID and name as the alias I want to use. We're going to be doing that several times throughout. Once we're done there, apply and close, and much better. So I have my Americas, Asia Pac, Northern Europe, and Central Europe. Okay, so that is an exploration. I should note that space is extremely important in PAW. Everything is kind of big. You know, the rows and columns are a lot bigger than what you'd see in Excel. The font is a little bit inflated. And so we want to cut down as much as we can of extra not unneeded content. For example, all my dimension boxes up here, I can suppress those to save space. So when I click on the exploration, I highlight it just like we did previously. And that gives me the toolbar at the top so that I can hit this little caret on the far right to suppress or expand the dimension boxes. We can leave them turned on for now, but we'll be suppressing them later. All right, I want to move on now to our first visualization to support the tabular-based data here. So that is going to be in the lower left pane. And so I'll single click in the lower left just to release the object that I had highlighted. And actually I misspoke. Let me re-highlight that object. And we're going to copy that object. So the copy is the duplicate button. So once I've highlighted the exploration, I can highlight the exploration and then click the duplicate from the toolbar. It gives me 2 copies. And I'm going to be using this right in the down in the lower left pane, and I can drag it, the crosshairs right on top of that expander button, so it's perfectly sized. But likewise, if I wanted to throw this on a different tab, I can just the same drag it onto tab 2, tab 3, and that would throw it over the fence to one of my other tabs. Just for practice, we'll do that again. So let's duplicate once more, because we're going to need data for the lower right pane as well. Same process, grab the crosshairs and drag it on top of the blue expander icon. Now we have 3 panes perfectly maximized to those spaces within the window. And of course, the bottom left and bottom right, we're going to change into visualizations. But you start with an exploration. You start with a table of data before you change that into a visualization. Okay. Lower left again, I'm going to single click the lower left to highlight that object. And I need to orient my dimensions so that the visualization makes sense. This can be a lot of trial and error at first, and they have, IBM has added the ability to build visualizations from fields, whereas before we just had to kind of guess and check. Using the fields, that can be very powerful, and I'm sure some folks have done that in cognitive analytics. So they brought that feature over to PA for us to build visualizations that way. But for the sake of time, I'll give you the free hints here. On our line and column, we're going to put our rows on periods. So I want you to swap periods with regions. And to do that, you just grab a hold of that periods box and drag it on top of regions. And for my columns, I want to have versions. So grab versions where it says actual, and we'll drag that on top of regions to swap. I have actual, forecast, and budget. I do not want my forecast, doesn't appear to be loaded, so I can single click forecast, and I'll right click to hide it. So that removes it from the visualization. Single click forecast, right click to hide. And now I'll just have a nice line and column chart of my actual versus my budget. Last thing to do is flip that over to a different visualization. So I have that object highlighted, and up where it says exploration in the top toolbar, that is where I access my visualizations. I'm going to scroll down, and the one for me, the one just below exploration, is line and column. And that doesn't look good once we have it there. So I'm going to click out of that screen by clicking line and column. That suppresses that menu. And the total is showing up, which by scale really blows out my visualization. So of course I don't want the total in there. I want to see the granularity between the months. So I can click on that, right click on that column at the far right, and I can choose to hide that one. Much better. And that gives me a nice visualization to show that we got a little ahead of ourselves in 2019. We thought that our quantity would improve month after month, and yet our actuals were a letdown. So they gradually decreased all the way through the end of the year, as shown in the purple bars. All right, and we'll jump ahead to formatting here. And what do we see that we don't like about this visualization? Well, those numbers that are in the millions aren't legible. They don't have any commas in them, and even if they did, it'd still be kind of overkill. So as long as I have the object highlighted, I can then click on Format Values in the upper toolbar. That's going to be kind of middle to the left. It's next to the Save button, to the right of the Save button. It says Format Values when you highlight it. And I'm going to choose the short abbreviations. It goes thousands, millions, and short abbreviations. It's kind of a combo of thousands and millions. It just determines how big those numbers are and what would be appropriate to truncate it to. And boom, very appropriate. I get a nice brief 100M, 50M. Okay, I also have dimension names in there, which I think is more information than I need, and it's taking up valuable space. So I'm going to turn that off as well. So still with my object highlighted, I can click Properties. And that brings up a whole bunch of different customizations I can do for that particular visualization. So if I have the Visualization tab highlighted, I can scroll down to where it says Axis. And everywhere it says Title, I don't want those. So I see Show Item Axis Title. I'm going to click that off. I see Item Access Label. I'm sorry, Value Access Title. I'm going to turn off that title. Just anything that says title, we don't need titles. We understand our data, so it's just more info than we need. Value line access title. And then in legend as well, there's a title for legend. I don't need it. So where it says legend title visible, I'm going to turn that off. And after that, if I suppress properties, so I click the properties button again to suppress it, that shows me that the name of the dimensions has disappeared, the name of the legend, the line and column part, that's disappeared. And so now I see, I have the purple blocks for actuals, the blue line for budget. I understand that part. I have the periods are self-explanatory across the bottom, and that tells me everything I need to know. So I didn't need any extra modifiers or titles. And space being at a premium, got rid of it. All right, that completes that line and column visualization. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know how I'm going speed-wise, or if I should speed up or slow down, or any feedback you want to give me in the chat. And if we don't have any questions, I'll roll forward to the next visualization in the lower right. And that is going to be a stacked column visualization. I'll go a little bit quicker now that we kind of know what we're doing. And the process will be somewhat similar, so we should be attuned to it. Can you add decimal points to the millions format? We do have the single decimal, and I believe that is standard, so I don't think we can modify that as far as PAW formatting goes. Now in TM1 formatting, in the explorations, I think we have a lot more granular choices, but for the visualizations, I believe that's just the offers that were given there, is the thousands, millions, short abbreves with the 1 decimal place. We do have custom formats. Yeah, okay, maybe that works with the Excel codes. So if you figured out that code in Excel, you could probably paste that in and get the kind of decimal places you're looking for, Brett. Can you alias value names to something other than what comes in from the data source? Yes, absolutely. And that's a planning analytics feature. Is we can have as many aliases as we like. We can manually populate those aliases or bring them in from a data source. Obviously, it's better if it's in the data source because we can automate that. But if we have to manually populate the aliases, we can do that too. Aliases are popular for a number of reasons. One in particular, for a global organization, you can put 10 different languages into your aliases so that your chart of accounts can easily just be toggled into a different language depending on the user. So very powerful for a global organization to tap into that and not have to worry about translation issues. Okay, thanks, Brett. I'm going to highlight the object in the lower right to do our stacked column chart. And the orientation on these we need to do is the periods and products are going to be on our rows. So periods, it will drag over to where it says regions. And if I put the periods on top of the regions, they swap places. And I notice I can't see my products because I don't have enough space here, but there's a huge right arrow in the upper right that shows me the rest of the dimensions that are being hidden. And I want to grab total products. This time I've got to put it side by side. So you haven't done this yet, but let's drag products. And right next to periods, we'll see a yellow rectangle appear to show that it's going to stack it next to periods as opposed to replacing it with periods. And we call that nested dimensions. So we have periods modified by products now. I see that my products are coming in as codes, so let's do our aliases again. And to do aliases, we click into the products dimension. Hit the blue pencil to modify. And turn on our mugshots to turn on ID and name. So the head and shoulders in the middle column will allow us access to the aliases, and we prefer to have ID concatenated with the name.
Hey, Brian, we've got a couple of questions for you if you want to field them.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the lag there, Chris, but it has been addressed, but I'm just hearing you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. Yeah, I covered that for Brett on
both
the millions format and the aliases. Yeah, it appears to be somewhat of a lag between the transmission here and what's showing on the screen. So, all right. So back into the stacked dimensions of periods modified by products, and then on our columns, we're going to have the sales measures. So again, I need the big right arrow. This will be the lower of the two big right arrows to access my columns. And perhaps it would have been easier to build this in a large screen and then fit it down to that lower right quadrant, but I think we're still okay. And what I want to do is swap quantity, my sales measure of quantity, which is up in the top bar. I'll drag that on top of regions. And I'm going to have all of the measures, but I only want quantity. So to keep just the quantity, I click on that column, single click, and I can right click to keep it. If I keep quantity, it means I reject the rest. And now I'm properly oriented and ready to turn on my visual. So I have the object highlighted. And I'm going to click on Exploration up in the top toolbar. And this time we'll switch it to a stacked column. Kind of towards the bottom. It's maybe the fourth from the last. There's 27 visualizations currently on PAW. And once I've selected that, I go to stacked column in the upper toolbar to suppress that menu. And again, I have the same problem here that I have the total year showing, and that really screws up the scaling. So I have to right click the total year on the far right and hide that choice. And it says since there's two dimensions stacked together, am I hiding total products or 2019? I think I'm hiding both, so probably got to select them one at a time here. Let's hide 2019. And I still have the issue. Now I have the issue of the purple section of the stacked column is misleading because that's the total, whereas I want to see the granularity between the individual product categories. So now I click anything purple and right click to hide that purple section. Again, it's going to ask me, what do I want to hide? This time I'm going to hide total products. So I've got to hide 2019 total and total products total. And now I have the stack column I'm looking for. So that gives us good feedback of both the data by period and then the data broken up into the product categories at the same time. Similar issues with all of the legends and the titles of the dimensions. I don't need to know that this is periods. I don't need to know that I have quantity coming up the left-hand side. So I'm going to go into my properties for the visualization, and I'm going to turn off anything that says title. As we scroll through, we notice there are maybe 3 or 4 dozen customizations we can do as far as the appearance. So you're getting close to the amount of customization that's available in Cognos Analytics. A lot of different ways to customize your visualizations. And that completes our stacked column visualization. Oh, one more. I'm going to do that format the values again. So that's in the top toolbar. Short abbreviations saves me some space. All right, overall, I do want to change the appearance of the grid. And I actually forgot to suppress the databases, but let's do that. Clicking the left-hand toolbar, the databases, so the upper left button for databases, we can suppress that. That gives us much more space, which I should have done a while ago. I'm sorry. To change the theme of the whole template here, I want to unselect all of my objects. So now I see that nothing's selected. And therefore, whatever's selected is what the properties menu is accessing. So when I don't have anything selected, it's referring to the whole slide. And I got a question from Stuart. Can I modify the date value to different formats? Yes. If you're referring to the periods, those are just aliases. So similar to how we would have an alias on the regions, we have an alias on the periods as to whether we want the dash to be between March and 2019, if we wanted to have no dash, if we wanted to show a numeric alias. So same way we can click into that dimension to modify the alias. I'll switch it to no dash just show you the difference there. So if your organization put up 10 different aliases for the periods dimension, then you could have any variety of how you want to display that. Okay, going back to the overall appearance, I don't have any of my objects selected, so now I can click properties, and that refers to the entire template. And in general, the canvas, I want to go to color and theme, and I'm going to change it to carbon black, carbon X dark. I think it looks a lot fancier. Other thing I want to do is turn on tabs, because I see those tabs going across the top, and that is costing me valuable space. So I can choose to show tabs in preview and turn that off. Didn't do anything because I'm in edit mode, but when I go into user mode, then those tabs disappear and I gain an extra inch at the top of my screen. Every little inch counts. All right, lastly, we're going to do selection buttons and synchronizations. So we mentioned on the demo system that everything was in sync, that if I changed one thing, changed from one region to another, all the visualizations are updated. That's not out of the box when I first put my visualizations on the screen. I do need to configure that. And so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add selector widgets. And so I'm going to highlight the upper data table and shrink it a little bit. So I highlight it, and then I'm going to grab the upper left corner box, drag down a little bit, leave about an inch. And that's going to give me room to drag selector widgets onto that area. And those selector widgets are going to be regions and customers. I'm sorry, products over there. Let's get regions back up top. I wanted that to be on title, so let's switch regions with products. I'm sorry, let's switch regions with quantity. There we go. So we're showing quantity for the total company and total gross margin for the total regions. And we should have, for our rows in the data table, we should have quantity, unit price, unit cost, and revenue. Okay. And then to do selection widgets, which is basically having these selector boxes outside of the data table so that I can suppress this whole area and save some space. Not to mention, I can synchronize with the visualizations. So to do that, I'm going to drag regions into the blank space that I just created. Maybe. What is happening? That's better. I think because I had it selected, it was giving me trouble. But once you've unselected, you're able to drag regions up there, smash it over there on the left-hand side, and drag customers up there as well. I'm going to resize these a little bit wider so everything fits. And for customers, I'm seeing have an issue with aliases again. So I will single click that, modify, and let's turn on the aliases for customers. Okay. Now I am able to do my synchronizations, and I'm first going to highlight the data table and go to properties. And the first tab is called the last tab is called synchronization. And I want to first unselect everything but regions and customers. I do that before I turn on the synchronization button, second from the top, because if I turn on synchronization first, it automatically quickly reselects everything. So I want to make sure we limit that to customers and regions first and then synchronize. So what we're doing here is saying, we're going to hide those dimension boxes, and then anything driven off of the selector boxes at the top will replace what's in the data grid, and we'll do the same step for the visualizations down below. So typically we only synchronize what is in our context region. So the items on the top are called context as opposed to our rows and our columns. We don't want to synchronize with rows or columns because we're only selecting one item in the selector widget. If we had that synchronized to a row or column, kind of defeats the purpose of having a row or column, because you want to have several items in your rows and columns. And if you had it synchronized, it would be limited to whatever is selected, the single item in the selection box. So I'm done on this one on the data table, and I'll remove the properties, suppress them, and then switch. Actually, you don't need to remove the properties. You can just click down to the visualizations with the properties still open and go to that synchronized window and do the same thing. I'll turn off everything but regions and customers, and then turn on synchronized dimensions. And single click the last visualization in the lower right and do the same thing to synchronize. Customers, regions, turn on the synchronization. They're all synced up. And the last step to complete our visualization is to highlight the data table and suppress those dimensions. That'll be the far right, almost to the far right, the little caret that show hide overview. That gives us a lot more space. That completes our full dashboard, and we're going to turn off edit mode. And I also like to hit the expander, enter full screen, which if nothing is selected, that should be the far right selection from the top toolbar. So we have as much space saved as possible. We have our data grid of the 2019 data for the whole total organization, total regions, total customers. And then we have two visualizations to support that data. And if I single click into total regions, I can easily toggle to Americas and see the data and the visualizations update. All right, Chris, I'm running a little slow here, so we'll dive right into the Excel piece. And what time we're trying to wrap?
So 2:30 is our hard stop. So you got 21 minutes here.
Okay, very good. Yeah, Excel might be a little choppy because I'm not sure everybody's software, but if your software is not working, then feel free to just follow along on my screen. So I'm going to exit the full screen by clicking the same exit button. And I will open up my Excel. And if anyone is attempting to log into the Excel piece, you're going to open up the IBM Planning Analytics. You're going to connect and build a new connection. And that gives you a connection URL, which will be the same URL pasted into the chat. planning.pm2analytics.com. And you'll likely have to log in again. And another item, if you are a first-time PAX user, you will have to configure account options, which would be your Excel account, Excel options from the file screen. So File, Excel options. In your General tab, you need to uncheck the compatibility or optimize. Yeah. The first option you come to, user interface options, you want to optimize for compatibility. If that is not selected, your PAX will not work, your PAfE will not work properly. So that's the radio button you come to first. Okay, having done that, you should be able to select your connection. Bacon 2020. Log in. Again, Bacon user 01, 02, 03, same password. It gives us the content tree within the task pane on the far right. The task pane doesn't show up, maybe check your IBM Planning Analytics ribbon and make sure that it is turned on. All right, within Excel, if your users or yourself are more comfortable in Excel, we do have the option to build explorations in Planning Analytics for Excel. So we can start by doing that. And so we can open up the sales cube and expand out the views. And we're going to right click the default view. That's going to give us the different reports we can build. So we'll start with exploration and we'll build it on a new sheet. All right, hopefully this looks pretty familiar to what we've just been working with in PAW, except in Excel format. And the exploration choice makes it very similar because we can drag and drop the dimensions to toggle the view. So we're going to drag total regions onto measures and do a regional report. This is our sales quantity by region. I'm going to go ahead and highlight the interoperability between the two, just to illustrate that we are hitting the same central repository. And so first, we'll go ahead and change the December 19 value. I'm going to bulk that up to 79 million. So for total regions, December 2019, I'm going to plug in 79 million. It's going to turn blue. And then I have the ability to commit that data in the toolbar. So in the IBM Planning Analytics toolbar, the data region right in the middle of the screen, I can commit, and the blue writes to the central repository, and that turns black. And I also see it break back across all the other regions. So given the current data values, it does a spread profile based on those values and updates the total so that the aggregate is set the 79 million that I entered. A very powerful feature there that it does that quick breakback. I'm going to flip back to PAW. And if I go to the total region, December 19, I'm going to see 79 million. And in PAW, I'm going to back that off to 77 million. I'll use a shortcut by doing 77M for million. And I'll toggle back to PAfE. And I'll do a recalc by doing F9 or a Shift F9. Actually, we might be stepping on each other here because we're all hitting the same repository. So if everybody's following along, this number might jump around as you try it on your side. All right, so we've shown how we're interconnected there. Once we've built out the report to our liking, I do want to change the aliases, of course. So regions, I'm going to edit the set by clicking on that box. And I do have access to my subset editor here within PAfE. And so I'll choose the ID and name. And so if I have the orientation set up with rows and columns to my liking, I can commit this report to a different report type. And once I do so, then I can start formatting it. I'm going to convert to a dynamic report on this sheet. Dynamic reports are analogous to active forms for all of the old-time TM1 folks. And what active forms or dynamic reports allow us to do is expand hierarchies on rows. So within Excel, I can expand my Americas and suppress. So that's very powerful. Then I also have the format regions. So because it is dynamic, I can't go through the grid and just change something, say, make that value italic and make this value bold, because the dynamic nature of it, once it refreshes, will wash out those changes because it's doing a refresh from the data repository to refetch those rows and those columns according to the current data set. So to get around that, I have the format area in the toolbar. So far right of the toolbar, I have show format areas. And that gives me a space where I can format different levels of the hierarchy to format my report. So for the 0 level, that's the top. Let's keep that as is. But for the leaf level, or maybe the subtotal level, let's change that to a different color. So I will highlight cell D5 on through E5. And maybe I'll add a shade of gray to those cells. When I rebuild the sheet, or rebuild the book, or recreate the book, that applies that subtle shade to the first level of subtotals. For the leaf level, I'll do a light green. So I'm going to go down to row 11, highlight D11 to P11, and I'm going to do a lime green on that. And I'll turn off the bold as well. This bold always makes me think of calculation, so Control-click B to turn it off and make it non-bold or plain text. And I'll hide my format area to get more space. So I see if I expand on my regions down to the lowest level, I get down to the green level, which tells me it's the lowest or open for input. As this is Excel, we can go ahead and add in any additional calculations. We cannot add in the row set. So if we try to plug in a row 31 or row 25 within the row set that is dynamically populating, it would get washed out. But I can build calculations below the row set, or I can build them off on different columns beyond the data set as well. For example, I'll scroll to the right here and say, give me the first, what does the first month of the quarter look like? Build a column called first month, and that'll be equal to the Jan value plus the April value plus July plus the October. Just copy and expand that down as we would in Excel. And then that would live update based on how those values live update, because they sync with the data repository. So if a planner were to make any changes there, our Excel calc would update with that. Likewise, any of the Excel charts and graphs are available because we are in native Excel. It's a very lightweight add-in that simply allows us to fetch data from the repository using these complex formulas. These formulas are all built directly once you convert from an exploration. But what they're doing is fetching all the different dimensional values from that data cube real time. Last thing I didn't cover is in dynamic reports, we also have the ability to change our selections in what are called subnums, SUBNMs. So by double clicking actual, I can go ahead and toggle from actual to budget in the set editor. That leaves us with 7 minutes, so I will pause for any Q&A. Chris, if you want to poll the audience, see if there's any other questions, or we can keep on training on Excel here.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of questions that have come in here, and we do have that hard stop here in 7 minutes. So depending on how long these questions go, we might have to put a pin in that and save that for another time. But let's go ahead and get to the couple questions that we do have. And again, if you are in the chat right now and want to add any, please feel free to. I actually see one being added a moment ago. So we'll try to get all these questions done and then get everyone out of here on time. The first question being, when should I build reports in Cognos Analytics versus Planning Analytics?
That is a great question. It's often a gray line. If you do have both technologies, then I would assume you have a rather robust implementation of Cognos Analytics. It is going to have the most comprehensive set of reports and the most customizable options available to you. So in that instance, most cases, I think you would lean towards Cognos Analytics. But with the planning community and the users of planning analytics, they can build the basic reports for their planning purposes. But as far as the board book and the whole monthly package, that could be brought out of Cognos Analytics.
Now, what are the licensing implications and migration fees associated with moving our on-premise planning analytics system to IBM's PA Cloud and adding PAW's PAW licenses?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. If you are going from on-premise to cloud, there are migration options. And so it's not like you're just throwing out your existing licensing structure and having to buy a new contract to get the cloud. IBM does work on a case-by-case basis to apply your current spend and convert that into a cloud-based subscription service. So we've had many customers do that in the past. The consulting fees associated kind of depends. You know, you do have to rebuild those data sources if you're connected up to your ERP system, and so that can be either, you know, varying degrees of complexity depending on what data sources you're using, how many of them there are, what firewall issues and technical issues we encounter. But PA Cloud should be just as compatible as your local system as far as source data goes. And then as far as having access to PAW, if you are going from native TM1, the licensing for Workspace was extra. If you haven't converted already, you would need to purchase user licenses for Workspace. The administrator does get a free license, but the user base, so if you had 100 users that wanted access to Workspace, well, you didn't previously pay for that in your TM1 license many years ago, and so that's why there's a supplemental fee to add PAW into your package.
Now, Brian, where would you recommend a new user go to learn PAW, PAX, Planning Analytics for Excel?
Yeah, there are tutorial videos both by PMsquare as well as IBM out on YouTube. So that is a good resource for to get your feet wet. And as far as, you know, complementary resources, that's always nice that you can do some self-study there. PMsquare also offers customized training courses where we can either work off of a demo training environment or customize to your existing environments, which is helpful. You know, if a new administrator gets hired and somebody has previously left the company, maybe one of our trainers can come in, get the feel of your system, and be able to train a new personnel directly on that system, as it makes a lot more sense. In addition, just go in and get your feet wet. If you have a demo environment, jump in, play around. You know, if you do get set up as an analyst, like the training roles were, as opposed to an administrator, you really can't break anything. So it is very user-friendly. Workspace is in what we did today, as far as just dragging content from the cube structure and building data tables and visualizations off of that. So you can become a power user very quickly, as long as you take the initiative and really get your feet wet and go for it.
Excellent. So that's going to conclude all the time that we have for this session here. Brian, excellent job. And thank you for those of you who attended Reporting with PAW and PA for Excel. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody.
So as far as where we go from here, in 2 short minutes, we've got a couple different sessions kicking off. We've got hands-on with Amazon QuickSight, presented by AWS. We've also got creating custom visualizations in Cognos, presented by PMsquare. And then at the top of the hour, at 4 o'clock Eastern Time, there is a Genius Bar session available for Planning Analytics or Planning Analytics Workspace. So check out what is the best fit for you, and we will see you in the next session. Thanks, everyone.